All right, to get started with React Native Calendar, what we first want to do is actually install it. So I'm going to kill the React Native packager, then say yarn add React Native Calendar. And then since I'm going to be working with dates, I always like to use a date library. In this case, I'm going to use date-fns or date functions. You could also use moment.js, whatever your preference is. Go ahead and install those. And then once that installation is complete, we can go ahead and start working with it. First, we're going to import the calendar from React Native Calendar. And then we can go ahead and render this out, and we'll just try it without any props to see what it does. Oh, and make sure you actually go ahead and restart your server. React Native start, Expo start, whatever. Okay, and here we have our basic calendar. Right now it's April 1st, and we can see a calendar showing up. We interact with everything through props like everything else. We can say on day press, and when we press a day, we can go ahead and, we'll do a console.log of the response. And now when we go ahead and press any day, it's going to go ahead and give us the year, month, day, timestamp, and then that date as a string. Now, if you see here, this date string, this is kind of how we need to format our dates to work with React Native Calendar. That's why we actually imported date functions so that we can very easily format our dates in the way that it expects it. So another thing we could do is actually set the date, or the current date, which is you actually interact with through the current date. So what we can do is actually create a new function that we're going to call format. And that's going to accept a date, and we'll default that to a new date. All right, and in here, we're first going to import our date functions from date.fns. And in here, we can say date functions.format. We'll pass it the actual date, and then we can go ahead and specify how we do that. And I'm not going to cover exactly what the format is here, but it's pretty self-explanatory, especially if you've used date functions or moment.js. So what we'll do here is actually format our date, and then let's go ahead and create a new base date. And we're just going to set this to new date, 2019, let's say 6/15. So we can pass this base date into our format function. And you can see now we're sitting in July as our base date. However, nothing's actually selected here yet, this 15th day, because we haven't actually gone ahead and marked it as such. So if we go back to April 1st, it's still showing that as our current day because that's what it is. It's going to pull that. Current is going to be whatever should actually kind of be at the center of the calendar right now. So kind of expanding on current, sometimes you don't want to, for example, when we press any of these dates, it's going to go ahead and log that date or do whatever action we want. Sometimes we don't want that. So you could set a minimum date here. And again, we're going to say, use this date functions. We're going to say date functions dot subtract, or rather sub weeks. And we're going to go ahead and subtract 1 week from the base date. So upon saving this, you can see all of these dates prior to 1 week before the 15th are not tappable, or they're not going to do what we expect them to. And when I say that, I mean they're not console.logging the tap. They're not doing anything because they're disabled. Likewise, we can do the exact same thing for a max date. All we'll do is max date is going to be add weeks. Once again, base date +1. And you can see here, we've just got this 1 week period plus or minus 1 week from our current date on what's actually tappable. So one of the powerful things about React Native Calendar is actually being able to easily mark different dates and kind of connect them all together. So let's say I've got this appointments array of different things we get back from, let's say, our server of these different appointments. And if you want to copy any of this, you can go ahead and get the code in the actual description. So what we can see here, we've got a date formatted in ISO string. So we've got the actual date, we've got the time, We're saying it's a past thing, today, future. So these are the days we want to mark. And again, this date isn't formatted exactly how React Native Calendar needs it. And we want to specify how we want to mark these different things. So again, I'm going to go ahead and create a new function. This time I'm going to call it getMarkedDates. And this is going to expect the base date, so whatever our current date is, and then an array of appointments. And we'll set a default value to an empty array for the appointments. So if we look at the documentation for React Native Calendar, which I'll let you do on your own, basically it expects an object for its marked dates. And the marked dates, we can actually go ahead and say marked dates. It's going to look like 2016, 2019, 06, 15, something like this, and then it'll go ahead and say selected true. So that's basically what we want to populate from this appointments array that we've got here. So what we'll do to start is actually have this empty array, this empty object, which we'll go ahead and actually return at the end as well. And just to get another step out of the way that we're actually going to pass this to our calendar is say marked dates is equal to get marked dates. And again, we need to pass that base date, and then we need to pass all of our appointments to it. So when I save this, it's not going to do anything because we don't have any marked dates. So first thing we'll do is actually say marked dates at format base date. Remember, we need to format the date appropriately, and we can go ahead and have our format function go ahead and do that for us. So what we'll do is on the current day, we're going to go ahead and say this is our selected day. Again, the markup or the keys are in the documentation. So what this allows us to do is actually see we've got this blue circle around our current day, the current base day, the 15th of July, 2019. Now to go ahead and mark each one of the days that have appointments on them, we can go ahead and loop over our appointments array. So say appointments.forEach appointment. We'll first go ahead and get the formatted date. So we can say format appointment dot date. And we're going to go ahead and actually wrap this in a new date just to be safe, to make sure it actually formats everything correctly. And then just like above, we'll want to say mark dates at our formatted date is going to be equal to an object with marked true. So now if we save this, we can see a typo somewhere. So let's make sure we type formatted date. Okay. So now if we look at this, we see we've got a mark on the 13th, the 15th, and the 18th, which is good. Those are our appointment dates. We've got that little dot down there. This is all the base styling from React Native Calendar. The problem is we no longer know what our selected day is. And to fix this, what we can do is just use the object spread syntax of ES6 and beyond. So all we'll do is say mark dates at format at the current date. So we'll go ahead and change this like that. If that exists, it'll go ahead, copy over mark or selected, and it'll also apply marked. So by doing that, we can have it selected and marked, and we have all of those different things. Okay, so something else we can do, obviously, this style may not fit into what your application looks like. So React Native Calendar makes it really, really easy for us to theme our application. Let's say we have this dark blue background as our application background. This doesn't all fly together. So what we can do is actually go ahead and pass a theme to our calendar, and we can start customizing it. So we have a calendar background, which we can go ahead and set to this same blue color. All right, we can go ahead and change, focusing on our selected day, we can go ahead and set the selected day background color. Go ahead, copy over a color. Make sure to add a comment here, or a comma, and we can see we're starting to change this background color. Now I'm not going to go through all of them but you can see basically the way they've got it set up is very logical. Selected day background, selected day text, selected day dot color. Okay, that's what we've got going on here. Now what about our default days? Just kind of these dark gray ones here. We can set our day text color, the text disabled color, so these other days up here, and then what is the dot color for those days. So we can see here, all right, we're now seeing our selected days. Our disabled days are much more subdued. We can also go ahead, looking up here to the month text and the arrow colors, we can go ahead, get those values and start modifying them to really fit our design. So it looks much more cohesive now. And this is just a small subset of the total theming options you can have with React Native Calendar. So last thing we'll cover in React Native Calendar, because it's a big package that does a lot of awesome stuff. And if you've ever tried to build a calendar before, you know just how complicated and complex it can be. So it's always great to have a tool like this for us. So next thing we'll do is actually look at the calendar list, which is basically, if we just swap out the calendar for a calendar list, which you can easily do, it's giving us a list of calendars here that we can go ahead and scroll through. There are some limitations on it just because of performance reasons, but I think it's optimized really well, and it gives us this great experience of just being able to scroll through a bunch of lists, and it'll kind of populate them once they're actually in view. So it's a really good optimized experience. Again, if you've ever tried to build a calendar, you know it's tough. So I encourage you to use this excellent package. It's one of my personal favorites that I think I've brought into every project I've worked on in the last 2 years. So definitely check out React Native Calendars to save time, build beautiful calendars, and get all those interactions that you're going to expect from a calendar in your application. I hope you found this valuable. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll talk to you later.